African. Oh, I guess we're recording. Like I said, I'm the vice chair for the Leadership Development Committee for the African American Leadership Council. And we have a great event for you guys today. So we're glad that everyone is here. So welcome to Lunch with Leaders. Our topic today, we're going to be looking at mental health in the African American community and trauma. You know, just in brief, it's something that we all deal with. It's something that's internalized in all of us. You know, being African American and just you know, knowing our story. You know, so it's something that we wanted to bring to the forefront that we could all, you know, talk about and have a discussion about. So now I'm going to introduce the moderator for today. Tina Gaston is the chair of the Leadership Development Committee for the African American Leadership Council. And Tina currently works as the Director of Nutrition and Wellness Education and Outreach for the Area Office on Aging of Northwest Ohio. In this role, Tina has successfully implemented the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also called SNAP, enrollment grant, helping older Northwest Ohioans with limited income apply and submit applications for for food stamps. This effort is to prevent and mitigate food insecurity as well as improve their nutritional status. In addition, she is responsible for developing a robust nutrition educational program and develop new funding streams for evidence-based wellness programs. Prior to joining the Area Office on Aging, Tina worked in public education in various roles and as an administrator and teacher. Currently, Tina is pursuing her Doctor of Education at the University of Findlay, expecting to graduate in 2022. She is currently writing her dissertation on the role of spirituality in the lives of African American women who have experienced trauma. Tina is a joint council member of the African American Leadership Council of United Way, Greater Toledo, and I already said this, and the chair of the Leadership Development Committee. Tina, it's all yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Marcus, for the introduction. I am excited and honored to introduce our panel of well-informed and accomplished professionals who will provide insight pertaining to this important topic and provide information that can be used beyond this conversation. First, I would like to introduce Mr. Kendall Harvey, Sr. He is the president and CEO of A Better Life to Embrace. This is a behavioral health agency established in 2017 that provides support to youth and young adults. A Better Life to Embrace, known as AALC, is the only agency that provides residential, behavioral health, and academic support in Northwest Ohio. Mr. Harvey has since expanded to other areas in the state, which has allowed him to participate or partner with 3 of the largest school districts in Ohio. A Better Life to Embrace currently has sites in Georgia, Florida, and California. Mr. Harvey founded the Brian M. Williams Foundation to honor a former pharmacy mentee who lost his life to senseless gun violence in April of 2020. The foundation is a scholarship fund to recognize high school graduates who has overcome unusual obstacles throughout their scholastic career. Currently, he is working with the city of Toledo to combat gun violence in the area by using one of his properties as a respite house for individuals who may want to get out of a gang. Mr. Harvey affiliates our African American Leadership Council, NAACP member, the National Alliance of Black School Educators, corporation membership, and sits on several other boards in the city of Toledo. Mr. Harvey is a Goldman Sachs Small Business alum, which has awarded him the various opportunities to grow his organization. He has also been nominated for 20 Under 40 Leader of the Toledo Award 3 consecutive years, with hopes of being awarded this year. Mr. Harvey is currently enrolled for his master's in counseling at Capella University and holds a certificate from Cornell University in diversity and inclusion. Second, I would like to introduce Dr. Latasha Sullivan, PhD, LPCCS. She's the director of the Counseling Center at the University of Toledo. Dr. Sullivan is a licensed professional counselor with supervision credentials in Ohio. She has an interest in social justice, in counseling, and the promotion of mental health and wellness within the African American community. She believes that Black Lives Matter, which includes their physical and mental health, quality of life, coping, and support systems. And last, I want to introduce Renelle Hurd. She was born and raised in Toledo, Ohio. She obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology at Wittenberg University and went on to attain her master's degree in social work at Spring Arbor University. Renelle has a passion for working in the community to impact change amongst individuals as well as the organizations that provide services for those individuals. Renelle has worked in the field of social work for over 10 years and has worked with various populations, including substance use, at-risk mothers, individuals with developmental disabilities, victims of crime, as well as various mental health disorders at the case management level, as well as therapy level. Renelle is trained in trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy and eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. Renelle is the creator of the Impact of Trauma, training geared towards professionals in helping them deal with the effects of secondary trauma. Welcome panel. I want to start out with a quote of the famous words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And it reads, "Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." And there's a lot of conversation going on about mental health disparities and racial inequalities. I believe that if we continue to speak up about these issues and demand change, we will see more progression in our world. Given all that is going on in our world, the devastating COVID-19 outbreak, the George Floyd case, and many others, and a plethora of changes, structural racism continues to disproportionately segregate communities of color from access to opportunity and upward mobility by making it more difficult for people of color to secure quality education, jobs, housing, healthcare, and equal treatment in the criminal justice system. Although some progress has been made, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. While Black Americans experience a wide range of attitudes toward mental health treatment, there's a stigma surrounding mental illness that prevents some people from getting help. I want to start this conversation off with asking Kendall to give me some information and give us some pointers on how can we demystify the stigma relating to African Americans and mental health.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I think the first direction that we need to go in regards to your question is just, for one, awareness, right? We need to make everyone aware of what's going on in the situation. We have, I'm just thinking back, you spoke of George Floyd, and let's think about all of the police brutalities, the killing of African-American Black men, even Black women. I think, we have the awareness there, but now we have to act. We have to follow through. We've marched, we've protested, but what does that mean after 3 months, right? After 2 or 3 months, we march and we protest, and then it kind of goes underneath the rug. So I think if we begin to, for one, the awareness is there, we're acting on it, but then the last piece of that is being consistent, and being consistent in an act of ensuring that, we're getting our rights and our justice met as a community. You're muted.
Dr. Sullivan, can you chime in on this?
Absolutely, and thank you for having me today. I think when we think about demystifying, mental health in the African American community, one of the things that I think stands out the most to me is that seeking mental health care does not mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that you're weak, and I think we have to start to really push that narrative away from the conversation, because people tend to see that that means that they're not strong, which means the opposite, that you're seeking care for yourself to continue to be able to persist and to be able to continue to fight the fight that we're fighting to just live. Life is hard, and we don't have to pretend that it's not. And I think that for so long, we haven't had access to care, or that the care was not culturally appropriate. And so I think there's been this aversion at times, but I'm looking at several providers right now that are of color. So Black people do provide therapy. And I think that that's also something that I think is important for people to know, is that there are people of color that are providing the therapy, so that there are individuals that look like you that you can receive the care from. Also, I think having that conversation about that people can go to therapy and have spirituality and attend church, because I know that that's been a challenge in the Black community as well, that you have to have one or the other, but they can be commingled together. And I think also being informed about what does it mean to get therapy, like what should you expect? I think by giving people information of what does it mean to be in therapy, I think can also help demystify that it's not there to be this quick fix, or that it's saying something is wrong with you. It's saying there's someone to be a support to you to help identify if there's a problem and a solution to a problem that you see in your world. And so I'm hopeful that during this conversation today, someone will be encouraged, that if they have not been in the past, to reach out to someone, to have more conversations about mental health. And I think that's where it starts, is in our close relationships, is having more conversations about it.
Renelle, can you give me your thoughts on that?
Sure, I was thinking along the same lines. There's a reason for the stigma. So we first have to address the reality of it, the fact that there is a stigma. Why has this stigma come about amongst the African American community? Identifying that, addressing that, and having those conversations first, acknowledging that, yes, we know that African Americans don't trust healthcare providers, and it's especially mental health care providers. We know that not only is there a distrust, there's disconnect amongst the client and the provider often. So, there are all of these stigmas, but there's a reason for them. So having those conversations, identifying why the stigma has come about, and starting there, breaking down the barriers at that level, I think are important conversations to have.
Can I add into that, Tina? In addition to that, being a Black male is so difficult to, and I struggle with this myself in the past, of just going to and seeking help, trusting someone to speak to. As a Black male, you have so many things that's on your shoulders when it comes to your family, when it comes to employment. And so we're constantly told that we have to be a certain way in our work environment. We have to be a certain way at home, right? And so at that point, we're told as a young boy that it's not okay to cry. You better not cry, right? You better toughen up, right? And so here we are as adults, Black men, and we don't know how to share that outlet with anyone, because for so many years it's been embedded. Hey, you need to be tough, you need to be strong. And so I think at this point, hopefully my fellas that's watching, if you're struggling with anything, it's okay to go talk to somebody. It's okay to cry, right? A lot of times we have issues within our workplace, we have issues within our home, and we don't know how to react, right? And so, we have licensed professionals that you guys could reach out to and go get those support services that you may need.
Very good. Thank you for that comment, Kendall. A lack of access to appropriate and culturally responsive mental health care is evident in the daily environment of Black individuals. The Black community exists at the intersection of racism, classism, and health inequality. Their mental health needs are often exacerbated and mostly unfulfilled. How can the mental health community and providers help people of color feel comfortable trusting, receiving, or even seeking mental health services? Dr. Sullivan, I'm going to have you address that.
One of the things that I like to talk about is that as providers, excuse me, we have to be willing to introduce the conversation about race, excuse me, and the client's identity into the room. Unfortunately, we do not have a whole plethora of people of color providing therapy. We have some, but we may not always get paired with someone that's a person of color. And so when you're not, you have a choice to ask questions of that provider, but that provider also needs to be bringing in your identity into the space as well, so that you can know whether or not they are going to be a good fit. You know, I think when we're asked to leave, we are outside of the therapy room, our therapy is not going to service us. So when we're seeking care, we want to make sure that we're able to be seen and heard. And so one, the providers need to be doing their own homework. They need to be culturally competent. They need to be seeking that cultural competence because it's an ever-growing process. But they also need to make sure that they're introducing that into the therapy session, that their practices of their organization should be evident. They should be very transparent. And if they say they do work within certain communities, they need to show, as Dr. P says, receipts. We need to be able to see the evidence of the work, you know, so it can't just be about talk. We can't just have pictures of people of color on our websites and then not have people that work in the organization that provide the service. And so for those agencies or those individuals that are providing care, we have to do, you know, actually be a part of the community. We have to be attuned to what's happening in the community, continuing to seek education about the things that impact individuals in the community so that that can show up in the space. Because I know for individuals that I work with, they're not separate from the things that are happening in the environment. And so if we can't talk about them in therapy room, then we're limiting the care that they're actually providing. And so I think that they have to be attuned to the national news, the local news, and things that are happening that affect the individuals that receive those services.
And I can agree with that. Being a past educator, I'm still an educator, but just seeing this in the education field, right, where a lot of teachers will they help and they teach our African American kids, but a lot of them just don't understand or don't have that connection in terms of that culture and competence, being able to connect with them and really help them. So it's really something not only in the mental health community, but it also is a broader context as it relates to the education field as well. Renelle, give me your thoughts on how the mental health community providers can help people of color feel more comfortable. Feel more comfortable receiving or seeking mental health services.
Yeah, I mean, along both of those lines, but you know, this really falls on the providers, and also being comfortable acknowledging your limitations as a provider. You might be the professional in the room, but you might not be the expert on that particular topic, subject, whatever that client is going through. You know, as a therapist, you encounter all different kinds of clients that are experiencing things that you never have. And so you're helping them work through those things. And so that may be culturally based, that may be environmentally based or social, what have you. So just acknowledging, being comfortable, acknowledging your limitations, and sharing that with your client. Having that conversation, I've never experienced that. Can you help me understand? Being comfortable enough to say that to a client and give them that space to express themselves and feel comfortable with that. I don't feel that therapy is only successful if you are in therapy with somebody who looks like you. That doesn't have to be the case. But you do have to be in therapy with somebody that is accepting of you. And a step beyond cultural competence, there's a term I heard within the past year or so called cultural humility. And so it's a step beyond being competent. It's that acknowledging that I don't understand your culture. I don't understand, but I want to, but I accept it, but I appreciate it. But that, I don't think any different of you because of your culture. All of those concepts of cultural humility. And like I say, just acknowledging your limitations and knowing where you stand with that client and being comfortable with that. Clients respect that when you're a human too, they can respect that when they can identify with you. I just think this really falls on the providers to do better, to be more open. And like I say, just acknowledge your own limitations when it comes to providing mental health services with certain clients.
Kendall, can you give your thoughts on how we can go about having mental health community providers help people of color feel comfortable and trusting receiving or seeking mental health services?
Absolutely. So both of the young ladies, they pretty much hit the nail on the head in the direction I was going. And so I also want to mention in regards to the providers and Darnell, I believe, hopefully I said it right, in regards to what she stated, not being a number, right? You know, these providers look at some of these the individuals that need support as a number, and so we have to hold them accountable for that, right? You know, they come in and need services, and the first thing they look at is obviously, you know, the insurance aspect of things, and not necessarily understanding what's going on with this person. You know, so many times I've seen it, you know, in the past with some large organizations, they wouldn't even really treat an individual if they didn't have their insurance, right? But, you know, we could work through that, right? This person don't have insurance possibly because they don't have an address, right? They don't have an address because they're homeless, right? They have a lot of different issues going on within them, a lot of different barriers. And so if the providers go back into actually providing care and not necessarily the number of the aspect of the business in a sense, you know, people will be more comfortable going to get the support services that they need. And also making it different, right? A lot of people can sit in the office across from you and, you know, in a therapeutic setting, right? So you have to make it comfortable. Go out into their area, their community to see what their living conditions are, right? You know, you could sit in your nice fancy office all day and they come in, they sit down and discuss their problems, their traumas, things like that. But to actually see in the midst of where they're living at, where they're coming from, that's a whole different experience. And you'll know how to better assist that family as well. And this is just a personal belief of mine, you know, because I love to go out into the community myself and see, you know, where these people come from, because I come from that. And so I was also one that wasn't a firm believer 10 years ago, mental health in our family, absolutely not. You're not going to see a therapist. You know, nobody's crazy around here. You know, that's not the case. And so you need to open arms with everyone and show them that you're definitely there to support them.
Great thoughts. And as it relates, you just talked about it, Kendall, as it relates to insurance, and many African Americans, you know, they don't have the insurance to go see a counselor or to get that mental support they need. So how do we go about receiving affordable and quality mental health on a minimum income? Just some suggestions of how those that may need that insurance or just don't have it, how can we help provide some support and some answers? Renelle, go ahead and start us off with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, this is an assurance issue, and it just continues to be an issue in our society, our community, our country. But you can access good insurance to be able to receive quality mental health care, but also just empowering people to know what's out there, to know that their rights as a client. You know, it's unethical to not treat somebody based on income or insurance. And so, you know, if somebody is engaged in a mental health crisis, they're due mental health services. And so making sure people know that, you know what their own rights are. But, you know, also, like I say, just to go back to, regardless of income, making sure they're able to get linked with good insurance, letting them know that within that insurance company, there are care management teams. You know, if you don't know where to start as far as getting linked with mental health care, you don't know what provider or who's good with your certain mental health concern, reach out to your care management team within your insurance agency and allow them to help you navigate through that process. And people don't know that they are able to do that. And so, you know, just like I say, just educating and empowering people to just know what's out here, regardless of your income, you can receive good quality mental health services. And also there are some mental health services that are free, that are grant funded, that don't require insurance. So again, just educating and making sure people know what's out there. And just to real quick, go back to your point, Kendall, as a part of mental health community providers, helping them feel comfortable, environment does play a huge part in that. And if you are not able to go to where they are, make your environment inviting. That just matters. People go into this environment, they're already intimidated by the thought of therapy. And if your environment is sterile or cold, or these bright lights are not warm and welcoming and allowing them to sit and feel comfortable enough to have a conversation, that conversation is probably not going to happen. So just wanted to bring that out.
Dr. Sullivan, let's get your thoughts on that. How can we go about receiving affordable and quality mental health on a minimum income?
I think Renelle shared some really good resources. I think one of the things too is consider if you do have an employer to check to see if they offer an employee assistance program, because that also can afford an opportunity to receive care. If individuals don't have insurance, some community mental health agencies will help you get board funded. And so there's opportunity to help you get linked up to different types of insurance. And so I think it's important to just make calls, and even 411 is a great resource to say, like, I need some mental health care. Can you give me some resources and support? And think that having information can be hard at times, right, to seek. And so starting off with some community mental health agencies, they will provide care. A lot of them will assist you in getting insurance. If you don't have it, they have ability to cover certain levels of care, even if people don't have insurance. But also some private practice providers will do pro bono work, or they'll do sliding scale. So if you have a person that doesn't have much income, you can ask, say, do you offer sliding scale? I don't have much income. Will can you assist me? And also some people may not think about this often, but colleges often, universities have often clinics where they can provide services. And sometimes the services are about $5, but they also will often say they won't turn anyone away. And so those are individuals that are highly trained that can provide that care. And I think it's also important, as Vanessa said, to just know your rights as well, because we can advocate for yourself differently when you know your rights. And so when we talk about getting quality care, being able to ask a provider, tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me about how, who you provided care to. I'm coming here with this particular issue. What might you do for me? So that then they're not like they're settling just because, they're paired with a particular person. They can ask questions to the provider. I kind of link this to like getting a haircut. I'm not going to just sit in a barber's chair, right? Like I want to see the work. I want to have some evidence. And so we can do the same thing for mental health care, is to say, look, I need to hear a little bit about the work that you do, what theoretical perspective you come from, who you work with in the past. I'm not going to give you names, but have you worked with people of color before? And giving yourself the opportunity to hear their words, because they need to be able to prove to you this is a service they're providing and you have a right to choose.
Kendall, what are your thoughts?
Both of the young ladies, they answered it, resources. You have organizations that will assist you in receiving insurance, the sliding scale. The one thing that jumps out to me, though, that I'm gonna mention here is if they don't have health insurance, then there's so many other things that play in a factor into that, right? If they don't have health insurance, and for the ladies getting their 6-month checkups, we have dental. Right, there's dental visits, right, and so there's so much more that wraps into them not having health insurance that also will affect their mental health. The certain foods that they're eating, their diet, how is their diet looking? If they're not going to the doctor, how would you know in regards as into if their mental health is being triggered by the things that they're eating? And so with mental health agencies, community-based agencies, and I believe this is typical. And it should be, is they should do a screening, and they should do a screening at the intake process to check if they have health insurance. If they don't, then it's a health screening that will also take place to ensure that they have or they haven't been making those regular visits to the doctors. So we want to ensure that they are going to the doctor to address those needs as well. So that's it.
Okay, we're going to circle back to some of the comments that you made earlier, Kendall, as it relates to Black men and mental health. Many men have not been told how to process and talk about their emotional experiences, and all it does is lead to isolation, anger, and resentment. And so many men struggle with the idea of being openly vulnerable and sharing their emotions. A lot of them have grew up in sensitive, being called sensitive boys, are often subject to ridicule and shaming for what is natural in healthy expressions of the emotions. Black men suffer in silence where they suppress their feelings. How do we help and support them when all they have been taught is to be strong? Go ahead and lead us off into that question, Kendall.
Okay, so the way we lead off into that is start forming more groups, healthy groups. I know that I've been a part of several conversations in regards to, sharing our emotions, sharing how we feel. And it doesn't have to be anything necessarily therapeutic. It's just a bunch of men getting together and just sharing how they feel with one another. I encourage, our Black men to find a happy place, find that person that you can trust, that you could begin to open up, right? And and I encourage them to go seek therapy. But again, it's like, I'm not going to see a therapist. I'm not doing that. Absolutely not. I don't got time in the day. Us Black men will make every excuse in the world not to go see a therapist, right? So we change it. Well, you need to go have somebody to go talk to, right? You need to go, have a organic conversation and just be able to open up. And so the direction that, I believe that we need to go is encouraging our Black men to have more social groups. If we have more social groups where Black men is just coming together and talking, I remember as a kid, and they probably still do. I saw the McDonald's over there on Detroit and Detroit and Monroe every morning, Saturday morning, it'd be about 10 or 15 men up there congregating, talking, right? They didn't know, but that's their time to express themselves. That's their time to open up with each other, right? Whether if they're having issues on the job, whether they're having issues within retirement, whether they're having issues at home, that was their safe place to go have their coffee, talk. We need more of those sites. We need more of those locations to occur, for our Black men to be able to go and say, what, maybe it's a basketball court, maybe it's the golf course, wherever that may be, they need an outlet so they'll be able to open up and be able to receive the help they need to receive.
I saw in the chat box that they'll go to the barbershop, and we're beginning to see more videos online with barbershop conversations. So Dr. Sullivan, give me your thoughts on what we're talking about as it relates to Black men that suppress their emotions and how we can support them.
I love what you said, Kendall, because I think it introduces that we don't have to go from 0 to 100, that we're not talking about emotions and now boom, we're in therapy. Like there's steps in between. And I think one of the things that's important, and we have to acknowledge, is that it has not been a safe space for a Black man in this world, right? And so then to be asking them to be emotionally vulnerable is a challenge. It's not impossible, but I think we have to create emotional and physical safety. And so having spaces, having groups where men can gather and be together and share with one another, and then be able to have a therapeutic value to it. And then when there's a higher need, being able to say, hey man, I noticed that something's been off with you. Like being able to pull people to the side to actually have real conversation and real relationship. I think that these interventions start with relationships. We are communal people, and being able to have spaces where someone's checking for you and not allowing you to say everything's okay. And so being able to have individuals, men, be able to pull other men aside to say, I noticed something's been off about you. I think, I wanted to check in with you. Can we go to lunch? Like, let's go shoot groups together, and pulling people to the side. But I think creating that space to say, I'm a safe person and I'm here to listen, and then not police their responses. We don't have to tell someone how to respond, allowing their response to be free and authentic in that process.
Renelle, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we have to start viewing our men different in society. I think we do hold our men to this certain standard of manhood and strength and, all of these things, and don't allow enough room for them to, for error, for vulnerability, for them to make mistakes. And it's showing them that just because that mistake was made, that doesn't mean there's not some repair that can be done. Doesn't mean you can't get back up and start over. So I think just having those conversations with our African-American men in this community and in all communities of, yes, you are a man, but you are a human being, and it's okay for you to err. It's okay for you to make a mistake. You can't figure out how to do better if you don't acknowledge the mistake. So, it's okay to start there and start at where there are some vulnerabilities. People throw that word around, but vulnerability is really the root of so much. It takes vulnerability to say you're sorry, to admit a mistake. It takes vulnerability to reach out and repair a relationship. It takes vulnerability to ask for help. And a lot of people just don't want to expose that part of themselves and to be vulnerable, because when you're vulnerable, that means that you can get hurt in some way if it doesn't work out accordingly. So nobody wants to get hurt. So, you put that defense up and you don't want to be vulnerable to protect yourself. I just think it's important to just, let our men know. And I have 3 Black little men that I'm raising. And, I keep this in mind as I bring them up, that it's okay to be vulnerable. The mistake is not the focus. It's what you do after, and just helping them get to that place of being able to accept their own selves.
So go ahead, Dr. Sullivan.
I also want to just jump in, and I love what you just said right now. I think also keeping in mind that when men are not speaking, it's internalizing physical symptoms. And so we think about just the life expectancy of our Black men, that we think about just by sharing, by talking, by being able to process, by being able to be in a community, you might be adding to your lifespan by doing that. And so being able to be here longer for the people that you love. And so I know that we have had some very unhealthy belief systems around what men are supposed to be. But I know in my relationship, I want my husband to share his feelings with me. It gives us a deeper connection. And so I think that it's important that we do create spaces and that we invite and that we start to change that narrative of silence and strength, because it served a purpose at one point in time. But times are we need something different now. We need you to be here so that we can continue to have you in our community, to have you in our family.
Absolutely. We definitely.
Can I add one more thing, Tina? And I want to mention this. How long do it take to send a text message, right? A simple text message as a, hey, what's going on? Hey, I'm just checking in on you, right? I did this personally to a good brother. He's a good brother of mine. And, I see him on Facebook. He's working every day, videos, but someone's in my spirit. I sent him a text. This was last week. Hey, brother, I'm just checking in on you. He said, man, I could really use that check-in because this is what I've been experiencing. Then I offered him some words of encouragement. And then I said, as far as in return to me, just do it to someone else, right? And so just creating that connection across the board, that we are just reaching out and just checking in on each other, because I'm not one that's going to display my feelings to the world. I'm not one that's going to let you know that I'm going through some things, right? I go into prayer, right? And I do certain things. And so guess what? That next man don't know how to do that, right? He's kind of, stuck in his shell, not knowing how to, release that. Sometimes you got to send a text and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Hey, what's going on? And so we do that more often, then, again, our Black men will begin to open up more.
All right. That is very good. You guys provided some great nuggets as it pertains to all of the subject matter, but really honing in on that with the Black men. I want to circle back because I saw a question in the chat box, and just if I can have you, Dr. Sullivan, answer that question. How do we find African Americans that are therapists in our city? Is there a way that you can give us some suggestions here?
Yes, so one is Psychology Today. It's just one resource. You can go on that website and seek by certain ways, by your insurance, you can seek by demographic factors, and that will give you some individuals in the area. I would encourage individuals, though, that because we're in this age of telehealth, you don't have to be limited to Toledo. So individuals are licensed by state. And so I've been encouraging people, if you're not finding enough here, look in Cleveland, look in Columbus, look in Cincinnati and Dayton area so that you can expand your opportunity to be able to find additional providers. And so Psychology Today is one resource. There's some others like blacktherapist.com and things, but unfortunately in Toledo, a lot of our providers aren't on some of those that are very specific too. So that's one resource that I found to be helpful. But again, look outside of Toledo as well, just because I know that not everybody may be on those sites at this time. You also can use your back of your insurance card when you call those numbers or you use the website. You can search that way as well if you are fortunate to have insurance.
Okay, thank you. Coping with mental illness such as depression and anxiety, both of these go hand in hand, and it's difficult for anyone. For an executive, the challenge and risks are very high. How can we provide support to those that are like top level positions? How can we help them deal with depression and stress? I want to start off with you, Renelle. Can you give us some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think companies need to do better at providing more. They just feel like you in the position figure it out, but no, companies need to be providing leadership classes, identifying different aspects of the stress that comes with being a leader, with being a manager, and how to work through those things. For people, when you're shopping around looking for a job, ask those questions. What does your company have in place to support me as a manager, as a leader within your company? So that's one thing. But I just also think on a community level, conversations like this, doing more of this, and hearing them out. Like I say, you get in those positions and people expect you to just figure it out, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you need some support. Sometimes you need some examples that were set before you to follow after, for you to come behind and kind of make your way in that. Making those resources available, connecting, networking, linking Black leaders to other Black leaders so that they can have those examples and those role models and feed off of each other, and allowing that to be okay. Just because you've reached a certain status in your career doesn't mean you do not continue to need support and help in certain areas. It's all about, taking care of your mental health is going to help you in your career development and advancement. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that.
Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah. I love putting some of the responsibility on the employer. I love that. The other thing is to, for one thing that I did is I have like a little sister circle. We have a text group. We get together, and it has been a tremendous help because it gives us the opportunity to consult with one another. As individuals, we are in different fields. But say, well, this happened at work today. I want to speak about this. Like, I'm concerned. What should I do? And so it's not getting myself out of my own head, but having someone in a safe way be able to say, how might I navigate these spaces? The other thing is being able to validate that we matter over our performance. I think sometimes we get stuck in that I have this title, so I'm supposed to perform a particular way. People expect something of me, but being able to say, like, I have needs as well, and that my emotive needs are important, and I need a space to be able to express that in safe spaces. And so I think that it's important that we also attend to that. We need to be able to be in spaces that we prioritize ourselves. Sometimes we have to take a step away from who we are and our performance at our job or our role that we play to say, what are my needs that I have? Do I need to go to my physical health appointment? Do I need to go to a mental health appointment? Do I need to do things for me? And that it's okay to do that. Your employer will be there. If you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be in a position to do the work. So you need to be able to fill your cup back up with things that are meaningful to you, connect to your value, to things that are important to you, relationships that matter, so that you can show up in that space. And it's very important that we know that we have to do that for ourselves, especially if our employer will not, right? So if we don't take the time to take care of our own needs and they don't, then we can't come back worn down and then offer something to someone else.
Kendall, give us your thoughts on that.
I say be personable. Being a leader, I believe being personable with my staff, right? Being so they are comfortable and open to say, hey, I'm going through this. Hey, I'm going through that, and it's nothing to give them that time. I practice and I preach self-care like no other. I in fact had a meeting this morning with my team, and I said, hey, make this work for you. You see your clients, but you need to have time for yourself and even for your family, and so we need to ensure that you have a schedule in place. And some people will have a struggle with time management. So I'm gonna put all the other organizations on notice and anyone else in the leadership role, take the time to ensure that your staff know how to work their schedule so that they can experience and know what it's like to take care of themselves, take care of their families, right? In this community mental health field, it's go, 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 right? It's always a family that's in the need. It's always something that's happening, something's changing every day. However, you can't go, 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 go. You have to set time aside and make sure that you're doing those things that are meaningful to you, like the other two young ladies said. So the employers, they definitely need to step it up and ensure that there are mental health days, self-care days, and let those employees know that they care and be more personable and not treat it like a business and like they're just not a number, because without them, there's no organization. And so they need to understand that, right? If they go ahead and they make sure that that employee or that employee is doing what they need to do. However, you need to also put incentives in place for them individuals, right? So that they can, be grateful for even more of their job. Your paycheck is a paycheck, right? We all get a paycheck, but sometimes those incentives, right? Those mean so much more than the paycheck in itself, because that means you appreciate me, right? And so we want to make sure that employees are appreciated and these employers are doing what they need to do to make sure that they're putting things in place.
Dr. Sullivan?
I want to add one thing. I know we may have several people that are executives or high-level leaders on the call. I want to encourage you not to isolate and being very careful of your internal dialogue. So I think sometimes when we're in high positions, we can say things to ourselves that can reinforce this need to be separate from others, but find where your safe space is. If it is another leader in a different organization, if it's someone in your spiritual group, or if it's someone in your family, I think it's important that we seek out where we can be vulnerable, where we can have our safe spaces. Because when we just listen to our own thoughts, sometimes our own thoughts can just leave us to say like, well, I should be okay. No, I shouldn't need to have help. And that's not a very helpful or factual thought. Sometimes our brains can deceive us. And so I think it's important that we don't get stuck in being alone when we're struggling with something or when we're faced with a new challenge. Even sometimes the coping skills and the skills we've had don't travel with us into a new scenario. And so it's just that we need assistance to be able to adapt to a new environment. It doesn't mean that you're not capable. It just means you might need some additional support to help you get over that next hurdle or that next challenge. So please don't isolate. Reach out to someone so that you can have that support.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more question and then we're gonna go to the chat box questions. But what are some of the steps that we can put in place? I think there's some progress that has been made. We as a country still have a lot of more work to do to move forward with this systematic racism that we're dealing with. So if you guys can kind of give me 30 seconds of just what are some of the things that our country can do, our leaders can do, our communities to help us dismantle systematic racism. I'm going to start with you, Kendall, and then Renelle, and then Dr. Sullivan.
I think if we go in the direction of, for one, we gotta stop criticizing our own, right? We sometimes fall into the trap that, we criticize our own and then that creates a division, right? So for one, we need to ensure that we are all locked in together. And we need to hold individuals accountable, right? When you're working in some of these capacities and you have that position that you can make change, and I know it's difficult for me to say and difficult for this thought process, but you need to stand up for what's right, instead of, and not look at, oh, well, I got to keep this job because of my pay, right? Because God, you're going to be blessed, regardless of, if you stand up for what's right. The other part to this is we have to decide, if we're going to go full-fledged with this, we got to stick to it. I feel like it's a lot of processes that we start something and then we just don't follow through. And so that's the problem. We have to ensure that we remain consistent, as I said earlier. And so that's what I have.
Okay. Renelle?
I think as a minority community, one thing that we need to make sure we don't do is feed into the systemic racism that is in place. Sometimes we start to internalize that and we start to allow it to affect our own personal outcomes, our own personal goals, and what we can do. So, make sure we're not feeding into that, and continuing to take steps to overcome the racism that exists and this, within ourselves. Also, acknowledging biases and making it okay to have those conversations about biases. And so people think the solution to racism is to, no longer be racist. And, it's like, no, we all need to just acknowledge what's going on within ourselves and deal with it and work through it, as a country, as a society, a community. So, there's just so much that needs to be done. It's hard to sum up, but I think the most important thing we can do as individuals, like I say, is just to not internalize it and not allow it to stop us from moving forward and doing what we need to do to be successful.
And Dr. Sullivan?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. I think one thing is important for us to explore what our role is in that fight. Everybody's going to have a different role to play. Not everybody's going to be at the protest or the organizer, but someone might be there to disrupt the system. Their presence in certain places might be the thing that is necessary to help move the pendulum forward. I think we have to also be careful of where we exert our energy. I find often that we get caught up in certain arguments that aren't going to move the pendulum forward. Like social media arguments, we're not changing hearts or minds there, but we could have conversations over dinner with someone that doesn't look like us, or that to make them have a better understanding, to let them have a relationship now with us, to be able to see things differently and clearly. I think that we have to partner with white people. White people need to partner with us, rather. One of my bosses calls them co-conspirators. We need them to be in the fight because they have access to places we don't. Unfortunately, when I show up in a room and want to talk about Black lives, people have already turned their ears away. But if someone that looks like someone else comes in, they may get a little bit further in that conversation. So we need a concerted effort within our community, but we also people that are not in our community to move this pendulum forward with us and get in spaces where our voices may not be being heard in the way that we want them to. But I think we have to continue to show up, disrupt systems, to question things that are not appropriate, and to continue to thrive like we've been doing.
Yes, because we are a resilient people. I'm going to go ahead and focus on just a couple questions. Any of you guys can answer this. We only need just one, just for the sake of time. Can you speak to self-medicating, for example, drug and alcohol use? People self-medicating themselves in the place of, getting the support they need. Anyone?
Well, I mean, it's an issue. People do it, and it does, and it is because of not having a full, adequate understanding of the value of mental health treatment and going to therapy and having a good support system outside of yourself. So, if you are noticing individuals in your own life, in your community, in your workplace who are self-medicating, again, just having those conversations with them about healthy ways to cope, healthy ways to deal with their own mental health. Mental health taking care of your mental health doesn't just start and end with going to therapy. You should be doing things throughout your life, throughout your day, on a regular basis to tend to your mental health. And whatever that looks like for you, develop that and stick with it. Going to see a therapist is only just a part of that. It's a lot of the work that you're doing within yourself. And so if you're undoing that work by engaging in unhealthy coping skills, then that needs to be, looked at and addressed, but also just having some sympathy towards those individuals. There's a lot of choice versus disease, and a lot of those conversations when it comes to substance use, that, give some grace to what those individuals are going through and what may have led them to that place in their life, but just helping them see that there are healthy ways to cope. But ultimately, they're going to have to deal with that. Addiction is a very serious thing that people need to tend to.
Thank you, Brunel. Another question I have here, how can a person suggest someone to seek mental health services without offending them? Kendall, you want to answer that for us?
Sure. You know, it's all in the delivery, right? Obviously, you can't, you know, sugarcoat what they, you know, the services or supports they need. But when we're dealing with our community, you know, we tend to say, hey, we would like to offer additional assistance, additional support to help aid in this XYZ. And we actually give a breakdown, because a lot of times when you go to a family, you go into a household and you're meeting with the mom or grandma or whoever the guardian may be. When you say, hey, yeah, I'm gonna get you set up with the therapist, the first thing they say is, you know, oh no, absolutely not. You're not gonna do that. Absolutely not. And so at this point, you know, we learned that we have to deliver it in a different form, right? You know, on more of a more comfortable, you know, and again, also I tell my team this, and I just share this, is when you meet with these individuals, is, you know, is you remain professional. If the families, however, you have to meet them to where they are, right? So a lot of times I've seen some therapists mention these big fancy words to these families and they don't have no clue of what's going on, right? And that's a part of you have to know what your audience, you have to know, you know, who you're going to sit down. And so it's just a matter of just the way you deliver it. It's all, you know, and how you will get them to, receive the support services, and you let them know what we help you with. This is what we can do. This is what, you know, what we will help you do this. You don't ever want to present it as if you're doing everything for them, right? We're just an assistance or tool to help them get through, you know, their barriers.
Wow, what a wealth of information we have learned today on this powerful, very critical topic that needed to be addressed. And I'm sure more conversation will be going on. But I just want to thank our panel for just the nuggets of wisdom that has been shared. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Marcus Harrison to close us out. Marcus?
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I was waiting for my camera to get highlighted. Yeah, I echo everything that Tina just said. I'm thankful for this conversation today. Great dialogue, and this is stuff that we all need to hear. Not just today, but just, you know, great nuggets of wisdom coming from everybody. So thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Tina. You did a great job moderating, and thank you for everybody that tuned in today. This would be nothing without all of you. Also, thank you to the people working behind the scenes, you know, that have helped with the planning and setting this up. It's probably too many people to name, but, you know, I'm definitely going to highlight Jonathan for everything that he's done. Last but not least, if anyone that's watching, if you're interested in getting more involved with AALC and what we do and learning more about what we do, you can feel free to check us out on United Way's website. Actually, I think Jonathan's going to put a link in the chat. If not, you can find out more about AALC and how to join through United Way of Greater Toledo's website. One thing that I definitely want to say that I took away from today is very simple, some homework for all of us. Call and check on somebody. I think that's the most simplest thing that we could do. Call and check on somebody. And when you said that, it prompted me to think about a couple people that I need to call and check on, you know, because they've called me or whatever in the past just to check on me. And it's a very simple gesture, but it's something that can open the door to a lot of healing, you know, and it's happened to me and it's happened to other people that I know as well. So with that being said, call and check on somebody, and you know, I wish everybody a happy Thursday and a good day.
Thank you everyone for joining us. I asked the panelists to stay with me for a second, so just grab a quick picture for the socials. to share. So if you could smile, and I'll take a quick screenshot, and I'll get you guys go on with your day. So ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, cool. All right, I got it. Awesome. All right, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy you guys' week. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.